Defining the word sustainable or sustainability, I think, is one of the hardest tasks you can ever do, because there's a danger that the words can mean everything or nothing. It involves leaving as much in the world for posterity as posterity left for us when we started here, generation after generation. That we're not doing that. We're massively not doing that. And despite huge efforts, we may be slipping backwards, particularly because of the hugely increasing scale of resource consumption. Not easy at all.
When London won the bid in 2005, it was so much about leaving behind a sustainable legacy after the Games. The Olympic Games sort of moves every 4 years around the globe, and we began to get the message that the IOC themselves and the whole Olympic movement wanted to look at how when this amazing event travels around the world, it can leave behind a more sustainable legacy.
It was one of the key brief items from the London Olympics that it be Green Games. And I think that's really manifested itself in the fact that they've tried to develop sustainable development. So it's not necessarily just about carbon footprint in terms of energy that takes to build a building and energy that it takes to use a building, but actually building a master plan and leaving venues that actually people want to use afterwards.
How can you actually design a whole sustainable village without any form of participation? Can you design that in an abstract when you don't really know who the owners are going to be, who is going to live in them, what is their lifestyle, what is their background, what is their cultural daily habits, you see?
So it's important, and it was really a key kind of dynamic at the very beginning of this project of how to look at what could be temporary, dismantled and taken away, and what you could leave then as a legacy, a permanent use venue, basically.
Our responsibility as architects, as designers, as developers, as the urban designers is to make sure sufficient time is given to develop what we think should be a sustainable project.
I guess my views on the Olympics are slightly tainted by the politics and the social consequences of this huge mega event, this international spectacle that puts London in the spotlight. And I guess I'm cynical about the effects that it will not bring the benefits to East London people as it's been presented.
I was actually pleasantly surprised by the effort and design that's gone into the landscaping, and I think that the finish within the park will be beautiful.
A very unusual thing happened to us about 8 years ago in 2003. We had just built a brand new factory very close to our previous one, And the reason we had to build a new factory then was because our previous one was flooded when the river we have just in front of us overflowed. There was some serious flooding in this part of London. So we built a brand new facility. It took us 2 years, and we moved in. And literally within 1 year of moving into this new place, we read in the newspaper that our new facility was located right in the middle of where they wanted to build the Olympic Stadium.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing, because there's all this narrative around the space being derelict and nothing being there. That's what's often used. You know, it's a space of nothing. It's post-industrial decay.
It was, in fact, the largest concentration of manufacturing land in the whole of London. And there were 250 businesses operating in the area that would become the Olympic Park, employing about 12,000 people.
Well, I'm optimistic about what we call the Olympic legacy, the new housing areas to be developed around Stratford Centre, including, of course, the reuse of the Olympic Village. I'm very optimistic about the plans because I think they preserve what is traditional and what is best about London. London's an interesting and slightly odd city in real terms. So that although we had marginal changes like more slightly high buildings, we still have a quality which is that of a relatively low-rise city with plenty of open space. And one of the most remarkable features of London, if you fly into it at this time of year, is that you can hardly see the houses. And someone recently said, London is the biggest forest in the United Kingdom, which I never thought about, but I think must be true in terms of the number of trees.
It's extraordinary. You know, since we reached an agreement with the London government, we found this site. They didn't help us find it. We had to build this building. The relationship has completely turned on its head. And having had this big battle with them, we now have a fantastic relationship with them.
But the whole Olympic Park was an area that has a canal and a river running through it, and it's actually very scenic, but it wasn't very accessible because of lack of bridges. And it has given that level of infrastructure to it and created a development platform that you would hope that after all of the temporary venues go, you will get a lot of development plots, which they plan to develop out with a lot of residential developments, basically.
But this is just the beginning, I think, of, in particular, providing an integrated system of public transport that gives you total information at all times. And the main effect will be, I think, to make public transport more attractive, more of a seamless web system, offering real advantages as compared with the obvious advantages you get from driving your own car.
We basically shot out of a helicopter at 750 feet, which is the lowest you can fly over London in a helicopter. And we had a specially designed rig and one of the largest digital cameras in the world, and that's what we used to make these images. It's the largest redevelopment in London for 150 years since Hyde Park was built by the Victorians. So on a scale of regeneration and sort of project size, yes, the largest in that long. So the immediate thing that hits you is just the scale of it. It is that size and also the flatness when you go into the park. I've been into the park on a sort of bus tour, and it's very, very flat and very wide and very open, and some points of it you're not actually aware you're in London because you can't see any of London around it. So it's a very different sort of place to the rest of London on that level. So how it fits in and how it grows into London long term, I don't know, would be quite interesting to see.
And at the minute, I'm really interested in the Anish Kapoor Orbital Tower. What I do is I do lots of sketches, sometimes small, sometimes quite big, sometimes up here actually looking out. And then I take the ideas back to my studio and I do really kind of like large 200 centimetres, 250 centimetres drawings.
A lot of other Olympics lately have been based sort of outside of cities or a certain distance away from the main hubs of sort of culture, business and people living. So some of those have, by default, have got slightly less use and maybe a little bit more neglected. But I think because this Olympics is slap bang in the middle, that legacy is going to be quite interesting to watch and actually see how it pans out.
I never thought Hackney Wick would actually have the Olympics, so it's just been really, for me, it's been absolutely brilliant. I've been done a series of about eight or nine really big drawings and masses and masses of sketches, so it's really kind of took over my life over the last 2 or 3 years.
I have quite a different opinion to Jeanette about the Olympics. Again, there's a lot of official business going on in terms of organising the events, developing it, talk of sustainability. But you know what? I don't know whether it's just me, but I'm a bit suspicious.
I'm hoping that the area is going to be great. It's going to be sustainable, that people are going to use it. But I'm also hoping, that it's going to be kept, that the people from this area are going to get jobs through that, through the Westfield Centre. I'm hoping that it's not going to be taken out of their hands and actually, people from other areas or richer people are going to come in.
I'm comfortable that in these neighbourhoods they will preserve the kind of traditional social mix that you've always had in neighbourhoods in London, where we didn't have huge areas that were all rich or huge areas that were very poor, but an interesting mixture of the two. And actually that mixture has grown since World War II in the so-called gentrification of the East End. So I'm very sanguine about what we're going to see in 5 or 10 years' time around Stratford Centre.
The one thing I'm extremely proud of the stadium is the way that we've really embedded sustainability into the core of the design. And it's been done in hopefully quite an intelligent way. We haven't simply added on a whole series of sort of eco-bling, as it's called, wind turbines and photovoltaic cells and stuff all over the building.
The majority of an aquatic centre is pool tanks, as you'd expect, and they have to be watertight. So there's a lot of concrete, and all the concrete that we use in this project uses 50% less cement, which is the main carbon-emitting part of concrete, basically.
And then this is the lower tier here, where which was originally intended to be the 25,000-seater permanent venue, and then everything else, the 55 remainder, was all set out above. And in order to keep things simple, we used a very simple elliptical geometry. We made sure that all the components that were used to actually construct it were standard pieces of kit available from the market, and we designed it in such a way that it was so repetitive it could be built quickly and dismantled quickly.
The government's clear brief that through the Olympics you not only get regeneration and an area renewed, but you get people encouraged and interested in participating more in sport, basically. So one of the key things about this was that it sits as a kind of pavilion, that it really is quite transparent and open, and it kind of somehow intrigues people and encourages them to come in, and people who have never swummed before hopefully will be interested to swim in it. And the way that the pools are then set up is that they've got lots of different floors, so you can adjust the level and the depth of the water so that you can create flexibility in use, basically. And that's the unique thing about Aquatic Centre or the velodrome, is that people can actually go onto the field to play and swim the same length as Michael Phelps did. So it's a unique feature, which we hope, of course, can be translated into actually encouraging people.
We've been watching this whole Olympic development outside of our window, and you cannot fail to be impressed by the way in which it's been managed. And actually, this has been a model of construction activity. It's been clean, it's been quiet. You know, we've been on the doorstep and you haven't heard it, you haven't felt it, but we've watched it. And we look out of the window and every day we marvel at what's there. And it's amazing the speed of it and the logistics. It's been a really fantastic showcase for what we can achieve in this country.